On a day close to the end of the year, I received a frantic call from my son's stepdaughter, and urging me to come to their house immediately. I drove to my son's home, which I hadn't visited in a while. As I arrived, I was greeted by a surprising sight. Then, "Emma? Grandma!" My granddaughter Emma was sitting on the concrete steps of the entrance, wearing her school tracksuit and hugging her knees, looking cold. "What's wrong, dear? Why are you outside in such light clothes? And where are your dad and mom? They went on an overseas trip with my sister." "What? Well, never mind that, come to the car. You must be freezing." I quickly ushered Emma into the car. I stopped by a convenience store to buy her a warm drink. Later, back at my home, I spoke to Anna in more detail and felt a growing anger towards my son and his wife's actions. I knew I had to repay these children for their trust in me. "Do you have the keys, Anne? To that house?" "Yes." "Then let's go there. And just bring what's important." "What are we going to do, Grandma?" I smiled. "We don't need that house anymore, do we?" My name is Amelia Johnson, 64 years old. I've been living alone since I lost my husband 2 years ago. Though I keep busy, I've been fully occupied with managing the legacy left behind by my husband. When I got married 40 years ago, it was to an old family from a region similar to Nebraska. Back then, I never imagined that I would eventually end up managing this large house. I grew up within commuting distance to a city like New York. My husband and I were college classmates. And we got married right after graduation. I moved to an unfamiliar rural area, relying solely on my husband. I was shocked to see my husband, who had been just a regular student, suddenly treated as a local dignitary and heir. My mother-in-law trained me extensively to support my husband. What my mother-in-law said made sense in the context of the local customs, so although it was demanding, I was able to understand and manage to accept it. Thanks to that, even now with no one else around, I'm treated with a certain respect as the person managing this house and land. Back when I got married, there was a big trend of moving to urban cities like New York. So, moving to a rural area like Nebraska was seen as unusual. My mother-in-law trained me rigorously, probably to counteract the local gossip. And soon after our marriage, we had our first child. He was the heir, a son. Naturally, this pleased everyone, including my mother-in-law. However, after giving birth to him, my health deteriorated, leading to a less active marital life, and as a result, we only had one child. I've often regretted that in hindsight. But now, with my son married, my in-laws and husband passed away, I'm the one managing our home and land. I've been left with enough passive income to maintain the large house and live comfortably. Of course, maintaining it required some knowledge and the use of skilled people. Thanks to my mother-in-law's training and my habit of keeping up with reading since graduating college, I've managed it without being deceived by relatives or associates. Even at my age, there are new things to learn, but it keeps life interesting. There's one main reason I have to manage everything so diligently. That is, my husband willed all his assets to me. Why? It was because of our son, Michael's personality. Normally, the inheritance would be split between me and Michael. But my husband chose not to. My husband had been saying for years before he passed, "If I leave half to him now, he'll ruin everything. I want you to judge whether Michael changes." Those were my husband's last wishes. Michael, at that time, had just remarried. His wife of over 10 years, Grace, passed away from illness, and within 6 months, he married a woman he'd been seeing. My husband was visibly shocked by the reality of his seemingly successful son, which worsened his health. Michael had been an unproblematic heir until then, married and settled. I do feel that we may have spoiled him, being our only heir. I am too, but with the whole family. He did well academically, attending a decent high school and university within our state, similar to Nebraska. He could have aimed for a university in a big city like New York, but he chose to stay local. After graduating, he worked at a company owned by an acquaintance. And he married a girl from local. At this time, Michael started to say he wants to live an independent life in our own home. We built a house for the young couple on a piece of land we owned. Michael and his wife Grace were very happy together. However, after the birth of their daughter Emma, Grace's health deteriorated. The doctors declared that she couldn't have any more children. I remembered my own experience and did everything I could for Grace. Her mother visited often too. We arranged for a babysitter and housekeeper to help out. Grace's health seemed to recover for a while. But about 10 years later, cancer was discovered in her body. In hindsight, Grace was an incredibly patient woman. She probably thought she had caused enough worry with her health issues when they first got married. That's why she endured so much at this time. Unfortunately, when the cancer was discovered, it was already too late. As Emma clung to her, Grace passed away at a young age. I was deeply saddened for various reasons. I had come to think of Grace like a daughter. And I loved my granddaughter Emma. Losing her mother was heartbreaking. But there was another significant factor that weighed heavily on my heart. While Grace was receiving end-of-life care, Michael already had an affair. He hardly visited Grace during this time. After Grace passed away, Michael remarried in less than 6 months. His new wife, Sophia, turned out to be a woman from a club Michael used to visit. Shockingly, they had been together for over 5 years already at this time. In the diary Grace left for me, she wrote about the days Michael stopped coming home. Maybe she thought of using this as evidence for a divorce someday. Now that she's gone, we'll never know for sure. Sophia, 2 years older than Michael. She confidently moved into the house we had prepared, bringing her daughter Anne, who was 6 years older than Emma. Of course, I opposed this marriage. Michael betrayed Grace, had a long affair with a woman of the night, barely visited his sick wife, and then quickly remarried. I never imagined my son could be so callous. But Michael brazenly said, "Mom, I married this woman through a match you guys set up. Isn't that enough of a duty for me? Plus, she should also be blamed. She broke her health before even giving us a son to carry on the family name. What's the point of marrying her if she can't even maintain a normal marital life? A wife who can't be active in bed. I need to take care of my sexual urges, or it'll affect my work." I had always thought my son was cold towards Grace. But this was just cruel. I blamed myself. Where did I go wrong in raising Michael to be such a person? Did we spoil him because he was our only son? Well, my husband and I did. But so did everyone else because he was the only son of a distinguished family. But we taught him right from wrong when he was little. My visits to my son's house had been scarce for a while. Partly due to being busy after my husband's passing. We mostly saw each other on holidays like Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. But neglecting to visit was a mistake. It was a certain day towards the end of the year. Despite being December, the weather was erratic. One day was warm enough to sweat with a little movement, and the next, a cold wind would blow harshly. It was challenging for me, especially at my age. But it was still the end of the year. Busy as usual, dealing with various reports, when suddenly my cell phone rang. Who could it be? An unfamiliar number. But it was my personal phone. It should be limited to those who know the number. I decided to answer. "Excuse me, are you Emma's grandmother?" It was a young woman's voice. "Emma's?" "Yes, that's me." "Who's this?" "I'm sorry to call out of the blue. This is Anne." "Sophia's daughter." "Why would she be calling me?" "I don't have much time, so I'll get straight to the point. Can you come to our house right away?" I wondered where she was calling from, as it sounded noisy in the background. "What? Why? I know it's hard to trust a call from me, but we don't have time. I'll explain later. Please." With that, and hung up. I felt like I'd been hit by a ton of bricks, but luckily, I had a bit of free time. As I stepped outside to rush to my car, a cold, dry wind brushed against my cheeks. Only then did I remember how much colder it was today compared to yesterday. I drove my car and parked it in the driveway of my son's house, a place I hadn't visited in a while. There were 2 cars in the 4-car space. Could Michael and his family be home? With that thought, I got out of the car and headed towards the entrance. And then, "Emma? Grandma!" I hurried over to her. Emma was sitting on the concrete steps of the entrance, wearing her school tracksuit and hugging her knees, looking cold. "What's wrong, dear? Why are you outside in such light clothes? And where are your dad and mom? They went on an overseas trip with my sister." "What?" I felt a sense of unease at her words. "Anyway, come to the car. You must be freezing." I quickly put Emma in the car and stopped at the first convenience store I saw to buy her a warm drink. She seemed really cold. She carefully warmed her hands before slowly opening the lid and drinking. I wanted to ask what happened right away, but for now, driving safely back home was the priority. Once home, I took Emma to the living room. I called the housekeeper to prepare 2 cups of warm tea and some snacks. As soon as we entered the room and Emma felt the warmth, her face relaxed, and I sensed something was terribly wrong. "Are you feeling better?" "Yes." Her response seemed younger than my memories of her. She should be 14. Even when she cried at her mother's sickbed, her wrists seemed fleshier. Wrist, hand. "Emma, what happened to your hands?" Looking closely, I saw terrible chaps on her hands. I remember we all had them as children, but it's rare to see them now. "Oh, this started last year. Does it hurt a lot? Are you applying any cream?" "No, I don't have any cream. Probably from using hot water for washing dishes and laundry." "No housekeeper?" "Dad let her go. He said it's too expensive and told me to do it." "Mom, what about Sophia? She's busy, and Dad doesn't like it when her hands get rough." "And your sister?" "Ms. and is." I stopped her. "Were you told to call her that?" Emma nodded silently. "Dad said to call her Miss, and outside the house. Inside, I call her and I prefer that." "Okay, then call her that." "All right. Also, she's not my mom, Grandma. Dad told me to call her Madam. I don't want to say it, but if I don't, I get hit," Emma said with a bitter smile. What was that about? What had been happening in that house during the days I stayed away? Eventually, while eating half of the cake brought to her, Emma suddenly seemed to remember something. She reached into the pocket of her tracksuit and pulled out a smartphone. It seemed like a cheap model, like a 4th grader would carry. Emma operates it and types a message to someone. "What are you doing?" "I was told by Ann to message her when you arrived." "That girl." "Yes. And Ann's the one who bought me this phone." "What about your previous one?" "After Dad remarried, Sophia said it was too early for me to have one and took it away." Sophia. That must be about Sophia. Didn't your dad say anything? Emma shrugged her shoulders and grimaced. Dad doesn't know anything about me. I was cut off from my friends for a while until my sister bought me this phone. She apologized that it wasn't the latest model and told me to keep it hidden. Keep it hidden? From whom? Of course, from Sophia, who took the other one away. Oh, Grandma. And just replied that she's on her way here from the airport. I thought she went on an overseas trip with him. She pretended to go but said she'd come back and wait for us. She said she'd find a way to leave. What was going on between these two? All I could do at that moment was wait. 3 hours later, after taking trains and buses, and arrived at my house. It's a regional city. It takes a while even if you're coming straight from the nearest airport. Ma'am, sorry to call you so suddenly and for making you pick up Emma right away. Thank you. And said, bowing deeply. Ma'am. So, you call me ma'am? For me, it's too much to call you Grandma. And said firmly. without a hint of flattery in her gaze. I thought she looked flashy like Sophia but had a strong character. You are Emma's grandma, not mine.
Right. Call me whatever you like. Now, what's this about those two going on an overseas trip?
They had been planning a 3-week trip, including me. But I knew something might happen, so I faked illness and escaped. They're planning to travel from Korea to Southeast Asia.
3 weeks! What about his job?
This seemed more troubling than I thought.
During the trip, my mother planned to offer me to that man. What do you mean? Exactly what I said. He had his eyes on both my mother and me from the start.
What a revelation. That is true, Grandma. Emma, sitting next to Anne, clenched her fist and interjected.
I've seen and being persistently asked by Dad to join him after I finished cleaning the bathroom. And always dodged it, saying it's a harsh joke, but Dad would click his tongue and yell at me to go away.
It's because Emma was there, I was spared. I was always worried she might get hurt. But I shudder to think what would have happened if she wasn't there. What in the world was happening? My son. How could he have become so corrupt? I pondered for a moment in front of the two. They were protecting each other. They seemed close. More like comrades against a common enemy than just friends.
So, what do you two usually do? Emma mentioned earlier she was told to call Sophia Madam. Yes. My mother married him for his money and stayed. I've watched him come to our house since high school, gradually turning his lecherous eyes on me. Now, living under the same roof, he's become more emboldened. Ugh, disgusting.
Hugging herself, and said she felt utterly disgusted. The only good thing was that I could go to college. I busied myself with university and part-time jobs to avoid going home as much as possible. I thought about leaving, and stayed because of me. Emma interjected. Like today. Those two left me alone, without even leaving a key or money. Told me I could go anywhere. And she was out there in her tracksuit. In the cold wind, making the chill feel even worse. The image of her waiting, huddled up. I waited because Anne told me to, until I knew for sure those two had boarded the plane and wouldn't come back. That's why you called. I stayed close to them until the last minute before boarding. But I had to call you, otherwise, Emma would have caught a cold. I'm sorry it was still cold. They could have contacted me earlier, but I understood their desperate need to ensure those two were definitely out of the country. Now that they've turned to me, I must help them.
Do you have a key, Anne? To that house?
Yes.
Let's go there now. Just take what's important. What are we going to do, Grandma?
I smiled.
We don't need that house anymore, do we?
3 weeks later. When life had returned to normal, 2 people arrived at my house, suitcases in tow, yelling.
Mom! What the hell was that all about?
Michael burst out as soon as they walked in. It seemed they'd gone straight to their house. And they found it. The place was empty, nothing left.
What about it?
It was my property. I thought it was unnecessary, so I demolished it, cleared the land, and sold it. Oh, your belongings are in this storage room. I had quickly contacted a real estate agent and a demolition company I knew. Understanding the situation, they readily agreed to my proposal. I tossed the storage room key to Michael. Startled, they fumbled to catch it, and a small clink echoed in the entrance.
Are you kidding, Mom? That was my house.
Oh, how did you come to that conclusion?
Huh? What do you mean?
Michael, you're mistaken. That house was built for you, but it was registered in our names. Now, it's mine. What's the problem with me doing what I want with my property?
What about the girls? What about them? The girls? Sophia, are you really the one to ask that?
I snorted. Anyway, come in, I said, inviting the 2 of them inside for the time being.
Aren't we going to the living room?
I silently led the two of them to our destination. The destination was the large hall at the back. "Please wait here," I said as we passed through the middle corridor and I opened the sliding doors. There, a group of about 10 people were waiting. But the first thing that caught Michael and Sophia's eyes was
Emma? Anne?
the two were sitting side by side at the top seat. My grandchildren were sitting side by side next to the seat where I was about to sit.
Anne. Why did you ignore my calls? Emma, you told Mom, didn't you? When did you get so cunning?
Their faces red with anger, they tried to approach the granddaughters, but the household staff who were waiting held them back and made them sit opposite us. Still breathing heavily, Michael and Sophia seemed unaware of the people gathered around them. "Now that everyone's here," I announced, looking around at everyone. "Let's begin." "Please go ahead," I said.
Thank you. Hello, Michael, welcome back from your long vacation. But I'm afraid there's no job for you anymore.
Startled, Michael turned to his left.
My boss.
His immediate superior spoke with a calm voice but unsmiling eyes.
Honestly, I never expected you to take a 3-week vacation just like that. I thought you would have stopped such bad habits by now.
At the low, authoritative voice, Michael visibly flinched. He was always arrogant with subordinates but weak with superiors. It had been the same since he was a child.
But you approved it until now. Michael, what do you think your value is to our company? If you don't know, let me tell you. Your value was being the heir of a prominent family in this town.
Michael clenched his teeth.
But it seems that it doesn't mean anything anymore. What do you mean?
Then his boss turned to me. "Michael." I was looking him straight in the face. Their gaze shifted noticeably. "Today, I intended to publicly announce the contents of my will, which I recently wrote in the presence of your lawyer."
A will?
"Yes. I had to write it in advance, lest my estate end up in your hands, right?"
Mom?
"It's already securely stored. The content is simple. If something happens to me, all my inheritance will go to Emma." Michael's jaw dropped in shock. After a few seconds,
I must have heard something strange. My ears might still be affected from the flight.
"No, ma'am has said nothing unusual," our family lawyer interjected. "The decision to exclude Michael from the inheritance was based on his abilities and spending habits at that time. I remember the previous owner's words clearly."
That's right. I remember that now. Only now you remember?
I shook my head in disbelief. Then the company's executive vice president continued. "As you can see, ma'am has decided to completely revoke your inheritance rights. This means there's no special treatment for you at our company anymore."
That's impossible.
The company valued the connection with a prominent family in this area, not your personal abilities. Now, what will happen next? The boss glanced at me. I nodded slightly. "Please proceed as you see fit."
Thank you. Michael, the whole company knows you took a 3-week vacation just for a trip. The senior management plans to demote and reassign you. Be grateful if that's all that happens.
Michael collapsed, as if all strength had left his body.
That's absurd.
Sophia leaned forward.
If Emma is the heir, what about Anne? Isn't she different?
Why would you think that?
Isn't she officially Michael's daughter on the family registry? Isn't that why she's sitting next to you? Stop embarrassing yourself, Mom.
And sharply cut in.
Embarrassing? I'm not related by a single drop of blood to this family. How can a complete stranger think they have any rights here? Are you stupid? What did you say? Talking to your parent like that. And you didn't even respond to my calls about when you'd join the trip. Yeah, I was looking forward to it.
Michael added. Looking forward to it, huh? And then took out her phone. Excuse me, everyone. Could you listen to this? The room buzzed with whispers.
Hey, And how about joining me in the bath today? Sorry, I have work now. What? Can't you listen to your father?
A dull thud sounded. Likely a washing machine being hit.
Dad, stop! And doesn't want to. Shut up.
A loud noise followed, then Emma's cry of pain.
Emma!
And you have work, right? Hurry up. Thank you. The sound of footsteps echoed lightly. The sound of a door opening and closing followed. It was clear that what the girls had told me was just a fraction of the whole story.
What is this? That's Michael's voice, isn't it?
Everyone looked somberly between Emma and Michael. And stopped the recording and said firmly,
That was just a part. I always felt in danger. And Emma, by cleaning the bathroom and toilet, often helped me avoid crises. Not just this time. She always knew when he was coming back. How did you manage that?
Then, without a word and glaring at Sophia, Emma took out her smartphone.
What? I took that phone from you. You just said you took it, right?
I asked.
Nowadays, even elementary school kids need them. And you took it away from a middle schooler like Emma? Mom, it's part of her education, right? Exactly. She doesn't need the latest model. Then at least a basic one would suffice. Nowadays, kids need to message each other to hang out, and there are school notifications, right? Have you two even been receiving updates from her middle school properly? What? I'm busy. I don't have time for her school events.
Busy with what? Anne chuckled.
What's that supposed to mean, Anne? Mocking your parent like that.
Your busy is still about deceiving men, isn't it?
What?
And Michael's gaze shifted to her. Mr. Lewis, please come in. And raised her voice. The sliding doors opened, and a man slightly younger than Michael and his wife, accompanied by another man in a suit, entered.
Eh?
Sophia's expression changed dramatically.
Long time no see, Sophia. I never thought you'd be able to enter such a place. You caused me to lose everything. No, why are you here?
Let me introduce everyone. This is Mr. Lewis, one of the victims Sophia swindled money from, and announced. Oh, and are there more victims? I asked Anne.
Yes. She's always been playing men. This man suffered the most, even though he was the most decent. Mr. Lewis, please tell everyone about her.
What exactly did Sophia do to you, Mr. Lewis? Marriage fraud and theft. He replied, causing a stir among those present.
What are you talking about? You gave me that money willingly. I was led to believe we were going to start a business together.
Mr. Lewis glared at Sophia straight on, his gaze filled with loathing.
She asked for a cash deposit for a property we were interested in, so I withdrew all my savings and gave it to her. The next day, she disappeared. Do you have any proof?
And operated her phone and played another audio clip.
Let's go. Why so sudden? Got a hefty sum from Lewis, so let's head to another town.
Bang. Sophia slammed the table.
How could you record that? Of course, I've been preparing to bring you down to hell. How can you say that to your mother? Mother? The woman who hit me and starved me for saying men were making passes at me? Even this trip, you plan to hand me over to your husband. I'm your mother. I can do whatever I want. Yeah, child abuse isn't in your dictionary, is it?
Then the man standing behind Mr. Lewis stood up.
So, we need to hear more from you.
He pulled out a police badge. Sophia gasped in shock and leaped back.
Why are the police here? You're really foolish. Mr. Lewis is pressing charges for fraud and theft. Isn't that right? Yes, and contacted me to arrange this meeting. Sophia, you should give up already. I'll testify in detail about the fraud, theft, and child abuse against me. There are things I haven't even mentioned here.
Emma swallowed audibly. That's why Anne was determined to not let Emma suffer the same fate.
I'll testify about everything that was done to me. Oh, I hate to even remember, but if it'll put you behind bars, it'll be worth it.
Anne's strength impressed me. My son turned out to be a despicable man, ensnared by a terrible woman, but meeting Anne was a blessing. Eventually, Michael and Sophia got divorced. It turned out that when the money ran out, so did their relationship. Michael and Sophia exchanged harsh words when they met at the police station. Sophia's extensive criminal activities were uncovered thanks to Anne's diligent collection of audio and photo evidence. Even the child abuse Anne endured was more horrific than expected, as the police informed me. Hearing this, I decided to do whatever I could for Anne. However, she insisted on only needing help finding a job after graduation. So, I planned to arrange an exceptional job for her. As for Michael, he was demoted and transferred to a branch office in another county, as the executive vice president had said. Yes, he was transferred to a branch office outside the county. Moreover, his position was downgraded to branch manager. Apparently, demoting him to an ordinary employee was too difficult. Thus, they assigned him to a position where he could cause the least harm, in a location outside the county where he had never been before. Ultimately, it was our overprotection in this land that led to my son's downfall. As a mother, all I can hope for is that he becomes somewhat decent in the outside world. Though I don't have high expectations. As for us, the sound of children's voices filled our large house every day. Now, Emma, her stepsister, and I live here. The job I arranged for and was to work as an assistant alongside Emma, who will inherit this house in the future. And agreed to this.
If you need me, I will obtain whatever qualifications are necessary.
With a strong person like her by Emma's side, I am confident about her future. However, as tough as Anne is, she may still experience flashbacks from her past abuse. For a while longer, I plan to support these two. I need to stay healthy for their sake. The problem child of this house was difficult to let go of because he was my son. And then there was Sophia, who was like a parasite. I will ensure these girls, who bravely eliminated these problems from our lives, enjoy a happy and age-appropriate life from now on.